know your name, I swear I do. It's on the tip of my tongue. Sorry, what did you say? I've known you for how long? Your face is so familiar, but no name comes to mind. Please, can you remind me if you'll be so kind? Staring out into space, asking God to hear my case. Trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last?
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm Lori La Bey, the host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks, and I just have to let you know I'm still fighting the crud, so my voice is a little froggy today, but I know we're going to have a great conversation with Scott Taylor today, so hang with us through this. Before I introduce Scott, though, I always like to tell our new listeners a little bit about Alzheimer Speaks, and bottom line, we are an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We are also seen kind of as a media model because of our large audience that we have in terms of raising voice regarding dementia and living well with it. We believe that just by having these everyday conversations with people like you and I who are in the trenches with this disease, if they're living with it or working with it, that's really the only way we think we're going to be able to remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help people continue to live purpose-filled lives, both those diagnosed and their families. At our core, we believe collaboration is the only way we're actually going to win this battle against dementia, and I know that's working thanks to all of you. You see, your likes, your clicks, and your shares have just had a huge, huge impact on Alzheimer Speaks and on the world. You are the ones that got us named the #1 influencer online by ShareCare and Dr. Oz. You are the ones that got us recognized by Maria Schreiber as an architect of change. And just yesterday, Oprah recognized us as a health hero. And again, those accolades aren't just for us, they're for all of us, because it really is a joint venture in terms of reaching people who need information. As a daughter whose mother lived with the disease for 30 years, I was very frustrated and felt really isolated, like so many people with this disease, and I wanted to make a difference. And that's why Alzheimer Speaks was created, to allow us to work together, to raise everybody's voice so that we can learn from one another. We can challenge one another, and we can move forward at a much faster pace. So I hope you will continue to like not only our radio show, but our blog, our website, our YouTube channels, all the different posts that we put out, the Dementia Chats interviews where I interview people that actually are living and diagnosed with the disease. Every time you push that out to your sphere, you are helping raise awareness and getting information that is so badly needed to individuals. And as we all know, nobody's going to grab the information till they're ready, but it's easier to grab the information when you think it's more of the norm than not. So again, I just want to thank each and every one of you on that. I also want to do an update on our dementia-friendly cruise that we just got back from. We went to the Caribbean November 11th and 18th, and there has been a lot of confusion because our travel agent, Kathy Schultz, with Elite Cruises and Vacation is planning several other dementia-friendly cruises, and I just want to be very clear that Alzheimer Speaks is not involved in those, and nor will we be in the future. And we will, and we are looking into doing more dementia-friendly travel, but that will be under the name Dementia Friendly Travel with Lori La Bey or Dementia Friendly Travel with Alzheimer Speaks, just to make sure that it is clear. But we just felt that we needed to separate ourselves because our idea of dementia friendly was, I think, a lot different. And we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the people out there. Though everyone had a fantastic time, the evaluations came back very, very positively. I just think there's more that we can do. And that's all I'm going to say on that, other than I can't thank my program team enough. Lori Shue, Mary Howard, Michael Allen Bogan, Harry Urban, Becky Watson, and Cindy Lazinski. They were absolutely beyond fabulous. What a great team effort we had there. Well, let's go ahead and introduce our guest here today. And again, very excited to have Scott Taylor with us. We are going to be talking about empathy, vulnerability, and acceptance. Scott is the founder and the creative director of ColourPop, an art and design firm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's also a writer and a speaker, and he travels around talking about empathy and vulnerability and developing emotional literacy, which I can't wait to have this discussion because I am so in line and in tune with what he believes. He has written a book called Jacob in the Cloak about trauma and emotional literacy that'll be coming out soon. And towards the end of the program, we'll probably get into that a little bit more. So welcome, Scott. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So fantastic to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, every guest I try to ask this first question, and that is, have you ever been touched by a family or friend with a diagnosis of dementia?
Yeah, I absolutely have. I mean, my mother, who lives here in Oklahoma, close to me in an assisted living facility, a memory care facility, has dementia, and she has had it for about 3 years now. You could argue that it came on a little bit before the official diagnosis, but, we weren't really sure what was just her forgetting and what was dementia. But, yeah, my mother has dementia.
Okay. And do you have siblings or is there a father present? Is she married? I'm just wondering kind of your support background there.
Sure. No, I don't. I don't have any siblings. I like to joke that my parents only had sex one time. I don't think that's probably true, but they were good after that. We're done. But no siblings. No siblings. My father passed away of cancer in 2005 when I was 20 years old. My parents divorced when I was 16, and my mom went to live in Virginia with some family and her family. And then my dad moved to New Jersey, where he was originally from, and lived out the rest of his life taking care of his parents, my grandparents. And then they all died around the same time. Like his father and mother, my grandparents, and him, they all died around the same 3-month time period. So
oh my
kind of
gosh.
Yeah, it was a pretty rough season for little Scotty.
Yeah, I bet. Well, it's very helpful just to kind of know background there, so I appreciate you sharing that with our audience. Were there signs that your mom had dementia? Did you know that before a formal diagnosis, or how did you recognize it?
No, there weren't signs of dementia per se. My mom, she always struggled with mental illness. She always had mental illness. She had it before she got married and before she had me, and then after I was born, it really intensified. And so that brought with it a lot of erratic behavior, some schizophrenic tendencies, just kind of growing. That was just kind of normal life. And we adjusted as much as possible. And my dad, he was so good at helping me understand, because my mom was kind of detached growing up, like emotionally, like she fulfilled her role and she loved me, and I could tell, but like those sweet little tender mother-child moments, weren't as present just because she wasn't able to access that part of her.
Sure.
And he did a great job of helping me to understand, like, hey, the reason why this is not happening is because of this psychological cognitive thing, not because she doesn't want to or wouldn't want to if she could. And so it helped me to develop, even at a young age, a really healthy understanding of psychological barriers and cognitive and neurological obstacles to normal living that are not personal. You know, I don't take it from like, oh, this is like, just like I can't fly. You can't be mad at me for not being able to fly. I just can't fly. Sorry. You know what I mean? Like, it just is what it is. It's not a choice. You know, and so, and by the same token, it's that kind of thing. You just can't access that, so I don't take it personally. So she always had those things, but she always knew who I was, always knew who everybody else was. And so there were never any signs leading up to that until she started forgetting, and she started looking at me and other people like straight in our faces and being like, "You're not so and so, you know, you're someone else."
Okay.
That's when we were like, "Oh, okay."
Okay. Well, interesting. How did you cope with it emotionally?
As a kid, I didn't. I mean, like I said, my dad was really great at helping me to understand that it wasn't personal, but I didn't talk to him really about how it bothered me or how it affected me because I didn't want him to feel bad that the situation was the way it was, since there was nothing that he could do to change it. And so I didn't really talk about it, and I just tried to make life kind of as normal as possible. I mean, I remember one time being in McDonald's. Oh, and on top of the psychological things that my mom had, she also had epilepsy. So she would have seizures, you know, intermittently. And I remember one time we were in McDonald's, and she was kind of doing some erratic behavior. She had some paranoid stuff that would come in, and she felt like people were talking about her or stuff like that. And then she just had a seizure right in the middle of McDonald's. In the full line, we were waiting in line for our food. And I remember being very young and being so embarrassed and so scared and also, like, just totally, like, mortified that this moment was happening right now that I just, like, hid under a table while it all went down. Because everyone was, like, running over there trying to help her. And I don't know, I just was, like, overwhelmed by that moment. And so I think I just coped by, like, trying to stay one step ahead of it emotionally, like not really processing it and just trying to pretend that it was as normal as it possibly could have been, I think. Sure. Looking back retrospectively, I'd probably say that was my technique.
Okay. Do you remember, like, the range of emotions in terms of, you know, once your mom was diagnosed, you know, what you felt, or did you kind of pick one and stay with it, or?
Yeah. So that was with that growing up. I mean, obviously the dementia didn't come until a few years ago. I was well into adulthood, and I remember the day specifically when I really realized that she had dementia, and I had gone out, and I was bringing her from Virginia to Oklahoma to stay in an assisted living facility here. And I remember sitting there with her, and she was, I went in to say hello, and she was polite, but not warm, which is, you know, weird, because you're like, hey, like, you haven't seen me in a while, you're like, I'm your son, you know? And so, and I could tell that she kept looking at me, but she wasn't saying, like, who are you? That she just was looking at me with different eyes. And then my aunt, who is amazing, her sister, who was taking care of her while I wasn't up in Virginia, was kind of bringing me up to speed and telling me, like, these things have been developing. And I remember thinking, life's never going to be the same from this point on. And whatever my relationship was with my mom is going to be fundamentally different, and I'm going to have to figure out how to adjust to that in as healthy a way possible. And I remember that feeling and just being like, oh man, I don't know what this is going to be like, you know?
Yeah, that's when you know things are going to change, but you don't know how they're going to change.
And you don't really know how much is gone either. Like, you're like, okay, something's off. but you don't know to the extent. You only really begin to realize the full extent of memory loss or disconnect as you have more and more conversation, more and more engagement. So at the beginning, you don't really know kind of what you're in for,
Yep, exactly. What's been the hardest thing for you to adjust to with your mom having dementia?
I think the hardest thing for me to adjust to has been my feeling of feeling bad that she is feeling forgotten. Because when I go visit her now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of the story, but she has assigned me a different, basically avatar. She's decided I'm this other person that she has created in her mind with a first and last name that she knows, and she interacts with me with that name. And so she doesn't think that I'm her son. And so when I go, she'll say things to me like, Scott's going to come get me soon, and we're going to all live together at his house.
Mm-hmm.
She says that every time, And so for me, the hardest thing is me feeling like she's over there thinking, why didn't Scott ever come to visit me? Even though I go and visit her often, it's just she's feeling like he's not here. He never comes.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but I know some that I've talked to, it's almost like the dementia really affects them personally. They feel so like, oh man, like why aren't you remembering, like what, and I think the foundation that my dad laid early on helped me to see, like, this isn't a personal thing. She's like unable to access this. It's not woe is me. It's like, oh man, this sucks for her.
Mm-hmm. Wow, your dad was a very smart man. Very smart man. Yeah, because a lot of people don't get that. Some people never get it, and some people it takes a long time before they truly understand.
I was going to say, I was going to say, I remember showing her, and this was like the hardest thing for me, and I think this is what's hard for people, is they're like, I don't understand, like, when the proof is right there in front of you, like, I'm showing you birth certificates, I'm showing you licenses, I'm showing you, like, look at this picture, and look at this face, like, this is the same person, it's like, it's hard to understand how it's possible that the brain can't access that information for someone whose brain works normally,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I think education is so helpful, because you begin to see, like, they're not being obstinate, it's not, it would be like, I have 3 kids, okay? So it would be like someone coming up to me and saying, you don't have any kids. And at first I'd be like, politely be like, ha, 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 I do, but, whatever. But if they kept insisting over and over again, you don't have kids. I know you don't have kids. Look at this thing. It says you don't have kids. I'd be like, okay, guy. I was like, now's enough, okay? I'm done. I know I have kids. Stop trying to convince me of something that's not true. That's how real those realities feel to the person with dementia. So when we're trying to convince them over and over again, even though we mean well, it really comes off very, very pushy and very kind of like I'm trying to kind of start something. It exacerbates. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
people often with dementia get so angry. So I try not to do that. But it's hard to get your head around the fact, like, hey, this proof is right here. Like, look, but you're not getting it,
Yep, exactly. I'd just like to throw out there, if anyone is listening and would like to call in with a question or a comment for Scott, you can call 323-807-4602. That's 323-870-4602. And we'd be glad to hear your comment or your question. Scott, was there like a ping point with you where you like, it's like, okay, I get it now. I'm gonna accept this and and move forward with the disease instead of trying to trying to fight it or trying to justify it or trying to change it?
Yeah, there definitely was. Yeah. So I remember for the first several months when my mom was here, I would always go and I was advised, to not argue with her, but don't further elaborate on, like if she thinks something's not true, don't argue with her, but don't add backstory and make it more real for her. You know what I mean? And so just kind of simple, just speak the truth basically, but don't argue. And I was like, okay, I was doing that. But what I began to see that was happening is our visits would start out pretty okay. I mean, she still didn't recognize me, but she was being polite. But then when I would bring up, I'd be like, hey, do you remember this? Do you remember that? You remember back in South Carolina where we grew up, and you remember this house and this and that? She knew what I was talking about, but it was strange to her that this stranger essentially was trying to talk about her history as if they were there when she knows that they weren't, which is a weird thing. I mean, think about it. You know what I mean? Like if someone just walked up to you and was like, hey, do you remember blah, 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 and you're like, how do you know all that? I don't even know who you are. That's weird, So it was strange for her, and I noticed that she would begin to pull back from me. And I realized, man, this is not getting me anywhere. Here's what's happening. I'm getting bummed out. She's getting frustrated, and we're both leaving empty, right? And so something's got to be done here, And so I decided, I was like, well, what's more important to me than she sees the truth is that she feels my love, that she feels love in general, even if it's not the love of her son, because she doesn't think that I'm her son, but that she feels the love of someone that comes and visits her and asks her about her day and hugs her and brings her stuff and cares about her. I mean, ultimately, I because I love her, I want her to feel love in life. And so I just kind of I'm Steve Holcomb. That's my name, And I just go as Steve Holcomb. And Steve Holcomb goes, and Steve Holcomb hangs out and shoots the breeze. And, and I just remember realizing I love my mom, and it's more important to me that she feels love than that she knows the truth. And that was a big turning point for me. And ever since then, it's gotten our relationship, her and Steve Holcomb, has gotten a lot closer, and it's been really rich. But that was a big turning point for me to make that transition.
Wow. Yeah, it's once you made that transition, how did you feel? Did you feel a shift within yourself?
Yeah, I did. It was an acceptance. Like you said, it was like, I think about the serenity prayer. Take the world as it is, not as we would have it. And it's kind of like, hey, this is not ideal. No one would dispute that, but it is what it is. Here's the situation. And so then the challenge becomes, okay, how do I engage with reality as it is in the healthiest way possible, which I think is what we should always be trying to do as human beings, right? Whatever happens, we just need to engage with it as healthy as possible instead of lamenting the fact that it's already happened because nobody has a time machine. It is what it is. And so when I just decided, here's what it is, and I'm going to try to figure out what my relationship to my mom looks like in the new reality that has been foisted upon both of our lives. And once I did that, I don't know, it's different, but it's almost not, yeah, we don't talk about a lot of the history stuff, but how I've kind of woven that in is I'll bring up family friends that we all had growing up, my friends whose parents were friends with my parents and that kind of thing. But I'll just be like, hey, yeah, I know so-and-so in South Carolina in the city we grew up in. I know so-and-so and so-and-so. And she'd be like, oh, yeah, I know them too. And I'd be like, yeah, he's doing this now. He's doing that now. Oh, that's really cool. It's kind of like I'm allowing her to travel down memory lane as much as she wants to without trying to push her on this specific subject of my identity. And it allows her to kind of talk about her memories in a way that feels non-threatening,
Well, and isn't it, I always found with my mom, when I finally came to acceptance, because I always wasn't there, people think that I have been, because it was such a long journey, but, I wasn't. There were times I was frustrated and sad and going through my own grief, of the process of losing her and what I pictured life to be, which is, I think, totally normal. But then I got to this point where I reveled in her peacefulness. And, my goal was just for her to be peaceful or joyful. I say safe, happy, and pain-free. Because what more can you really ask for in life? I mean, if I'm safe, I'm happy, and I'm pain-free, that's a pretty dang good life. And so, that's what I made my goal to be, was to help my mom be in that space. And then it would just melt my heart, when she was there. She really pulled me in to be present in the moment and paying attention instead of just scurrying about the day. And that was just such a huge gift. It changes. It did for me, and I'll ask you. For me, it changed my whole outlook on life and in what I look for, not only in myself but in others. Did it have that kind of impact on you?
Absolutely. I think that, we, especially as Americans, right, but all over the world, we have this, we really want things to be normal and right, like we're just like, this is how it's supposed to be. And when it's not, we feel like everything's on hold until we get closer to normal, or to get to normal, whatever normal means,
Yeah.
But there's a certain really powerful effect, I believe, that begins to take hold when you realize nothing is normal and everything is normal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just life is. Things, you know what I mean? Like, it's like good and bad, right? Well, what is good? What is bad? There really isn't. It is for you. Like, things happen and you just engage with them, and of course, I'm not saying, of course, there's, objectively bad things, but an objectively bad thing that can happen to someone can become a good, informative thing for you, depending on how you choose to engage with it. And so, like, dementia is bad. Dementia sucks, right? But dementia, when it touches someone's life and then it touches the whole family, you realize, like, hey, this is a non-ideal situation, but I'm going to try to redeem it as much as possible through how I'm engaging with it to make it as good as it possibly can be. And when I started doing that for my mom, it started to help me to see other things in my life in that same way. And so when something would happen that would be non-ideal, or something would go awry, I would just be like, okay, this is my new reality. Just like when I found out my mom had dementia, I was like, okay, this is my new reality. How do I engage with it in a healthy way? And so I would try to adopt that same approach in dealing with other situations in my life. So, yeah, it definitely did.
Yeah, it makes life easier when you don't feel like you have to control everything all the time.
Control is an addictive drug.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when you think about, I don't know, because I was always organized. My brothers would call me a control freak, but that's just their perception.
That's just their very wrong perception. Exactly. They're wrong.
Exactly. And so, that came out kind of in a part of our healing process when my dad died, which was pretty hilarious because I never saw myself as that. I think I'm pretty open, and I like to push things forward, and I would define it very differently. And so it was really interesting because they kind of use that as an excuse not to come around. But it made me look at myself differently, and I don't want somebody using that as an excuse, be it right or wrong. I need to change that if it is real or if it's just their perception, because it's easier. Yeah, exactly. So it was, and I think they'd probably still call me a control freak, but I think I've changed a lot. They may or may not appreciate how much work I've put into it or not. But again,
I was just going to say, I think you bring up such a great point. That goes back to that empathy, right? You're talking essentially about empathy, right?
Yeah.
You're saying, like, listen, I don't personally feel like the intensity with which you're describing my control tendencies are as bad as they are in your mind. But honestly, that kind of is wildly irrelevant, because the reality is you have someone who you love, your siblings. They're telling you, listen, the way that you're acting is making me feel a certain way. Now, whether they're wrong or you're wrong, it kind of doesn't matter, because the onus falls on you to bridge the gap for love's sake, right? So you're saying, you know what, because I love you, I'm going to try to understand, and I'm going to try to make changes for love's sake, not to be right, not to be, and to understand, like, hey, again, whether it's real or perceived, you're feeling hurt. And I know what it's, or frustrated, or whatever it is. And because I know what it's like to feel frustrated, I know what it's like to be hurt. Even though the catalyst might be different, it's that same emotion, and that helps you to identify with that person and gives you the strength to be able to make changes and to keep moving forward in that healing process, you know? And so I think that's so cool. I mean, that's essentially what you're talking about with your siblings, and that's kind of what all of us whose family members have been touched by dementia, there's an empathy, right? Like, I think to myself, man, it would be really frustrating if someone tried to convince me that I didn't have kids. You know, it's like, oh, maybe I should, like, stop pushing her so much and shoving my license in her face and be like, look at this. I mean, not really, but you know what I mean? Like, look at this, Mom, this is me. You know, so it's different, you know?
Yeah, it is very interesting. I just think there's so many beautiful lessons wrapped in this disease. You know, being able to not take everything as black and white and see the beautiful colors that lay between, or the different stories that could be seen, all from, you know, the same view, but yet being perceived differently. And just going with it and saying, oh, is that what you see? Kind of, I don't know, to me it almost made life almost like an art palette, where everybody sees something differently, and it's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And to me, that's just a really, really beautiful, beautiful lesson for individuals and families to have. And you know, how nice would it be if our world actually could live in that space, you know, and not fight in this right or wrong, you know, my way or the highway type attitude, and just say, oh, that's an interesting point of view, or that's a great story, or that's whatever it is, and just accept it and move within it, instead of trying to make it your vision of what it's supposed to be.
Or just say, you know, I'm not going to engage with you until things are the way I feel like they should be. You know, it's like withholding affection, withholding relationship, withholding engagement. You know, that is super unhealthy, you know, but we do it all the time, you know, and so that's one of the big lessons that, you know, I've learned through this journey with my mom's dementia is you know, I can't make her not have dementia, you know. I can't make her remember. I can't make her be a mom to me like other adult children. Friends of mine have moms that, you know, cook them Sunday dinner and, you know, dote on them and kind of do, you know, like, I'll never have that. You know, that's, I can't make that a reality. But what I can do is I can, for love's sake, try to make life as good as it possibly can be for her, which, interestingly enough, makes life as good as it possibly can be for me when I do that for her. You know?
Yep. Well, and I think that's such a big piece that's overlooked in life, is that it's not just about us. I mean, I know we talk about the me society and stuff, but again, you know, when others are happy and feel supported, it fills your soul, and it gives you this calmness, I think. Yeah, it really does. I know my friends would refer to me as the calm one. They're like, nothing really rattles your cage too much anymore, and I'm like, well, in the big picture, you know, it isn't worth it, because I can't control it. I can control is my reaction to it. And not like that's a new statement, but most of us don't really take that to heart. We just react. And if we would, go ahead.
No, you finish your statement.
Oh, I was just going to say, if we would really look deeply at ourselves in terms of, what is our reaction? How does that, reflect not only on us, but how does that make others feel? Just what a different world we would be in.
Yeah.
It's
the practice of empathy. It's the practice of empathy. It's really, really so important. And to your what you just said just a few minutes ago about taking it as it is, and trying to find a way to engage with that. I've got a little mantra that I kind of often will think about, and it is just this. It says, "Do what you can, not what you can't." And so for me, I have a very logical personality. So I just think like, okay, well, if something isn't feasible, then me personally to keep dwelling on it is kind of silly. Like I think of it as a silly thing. I'm just like, oh. So for me, it's like I try to remember that. Do what you can, not what you can't. So boom, dementia. Mom's got dementia. Okay, mantra. Do what you can, not what you can't. Okay, what can't I do? Can't make her not have dementia. Can't make her do this. Okay, that's out. What can I do? Well, I can visit her. I can try to engage with her. I can kind of educate myself. I can do those things. So I'll do those things. And then all the things that are out of the realm of possibility that are just impossible to do, I will release and not kind of struggle with and let weigh on me. I will just move past them. And I'll only focus on what I can do. And I think you can take that principle and apply it to all things in life, Oh, man, boom, something has happened. It's a non-ideal situation, whatever it may be. Okay, mantra, do what you can, not what you can't. If there's a relational issue you have with someone, okay, you can't go back in time. You can't make them feel a different way, but you can think about your role. You can try to go to them. You can try to be heard in a humble and loving way. There's things you can do. So I think that just kind of helps across the board in engaging with difficult circumstances, no matter what they are.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, I love your mantra. I think that makes so much sense. One that I use too is perfection doesn't exist. It exists for one moment, and we so badly want everything to be perfect, but very little in life is perfect. And very little in life was perfect before dementia hit. We just never looked at it like that. And so
that's right. That is right.
That's something that you don't need to attain. You're going to spin your wheels. You're going to procrastinate. You're going to do all kinds of stuff, waiting for perfection. And just engage and know that you always have another opportunity to do better. That we can always improve, even if we hit that perfect for a second. We can always improve the next time and make it even better. We can always enrich lives. We can, if we consciously engage, and I think that that's a really kind of fun piece and gives hope instead of the shame of perfection, or having this perfect life or whatever it might be, and exploring this new world. With some enthusiasm that there are things to learn. There are moments to cherish, because if you look back at your life, it probably hasn't gone as scripted as you thought it was going to. We've all had huge hurdles to push ourselves through, and it could be relationship, it could be job, it could be, the list doesn't end with that kind of stuff. Things that we've felt we haven't been good enough, we haven't fit in, whatever it might be. And, that's not a perfect life, but that is part of life. And there's huge learning lessons in all of that. And, to learn to play again, too. I think it was one of the big lessons, my mom taught me was, there's more than one way to skin a cat, they say, or I tell my daughter, my granddaughter now, there's more than one way to do the new math, because she wants to do it one way, and I don't know how to do it that way, but I can show you 3 other ways to do it.
Yeah, when you think about it, the more than one way to skin a cat thing is kind of terrible. Like, we should not say that anymore. We need to find a new idiom.
Exactly. And,
but you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, there is more than one way to solve a problem, or to push through something or create something. One of the things that I wanted to talk with you too about was, we've talked about empathy, but what about the vulnerability of walking alongside the disease with your mom?
Like specifically in respect to being vulnerable with her or with other people, or what do you mean?
Well, I think all, even yourself, just being authentic and feeling whatever it is you need to feel, or having those earnest conversations that maybe not everyone's going to agree with. Did you go through that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had to be honest with myself about how the disease affected me, and I had to let myself kind of grieve, because at first I was like, man, like, I shouldn't be sad because, like, she can't do anything about it. It's not her fault. So, or frustrated or anything like that, and I kind of didn't allow myself. But I really tried to, and it was difficult for me, but I really kind of very clumsily began to try to practice almost wielding and handling those emotions and naming them and processing through them, and knowing, like, hey, me feeling upset or frustrated about this situation isn't me being upset with her. It's just me engaging with this emotion in an honest way. And when I began to do that, that really opened up the door. In order to get help with something, you have to at least name it first. You have to own it. You have to name it, right? And so I talked to friends, and of course my aunt has been a tremendous help, as well as members, like friends that we had in South Carolina growing up that weren't family, but they're, might as well be family, that knew my mom. She was, in all those years, in my formative years. And just having that community and just being honest about that process was truly helpful as well. I mean, I think vulnerability, in my opinion, is the key to living a vitalized life, just in general, right? So whenever you have a situation that feels big and difficult and overwhelming, the more vulnerable you can be with trusted people that love you and that are close and that have kind of earned the right to be there, it's gonna help you in every way, and it's gonna give you the tools necessary to take that bad thing and to build it in such a way to where it becomes a thing that moves you forward and it begins to help other people.
Now, I just had somebody shoot me an email, and they were wondering, with your mom, do you think she noticed your changes at all that you were going through in terms of dealing with the disease? Do you think it was at any point evident to her that you kind of became a new person?
Sure. I personally, of course, I don't know because I'm not in her brain, but I don't think my mom did, but that's not because of the dementia. I think that's more to do with the fact that the dementia plus the other stuff that was already present, because my mom always has had difficulty identifying with the emotions of others, and so I think that for my mom, she is very focused on her world and her reality and what she thinks, and so the nuances, right, of like you're reading someone's body movements, their language, you're listening close. That's something that really my mom has never done. So I think that she, isn't going to start now, obviously. But I know that certainly, though she might not have had a language to explain it and be able to articulate it in that way, I definitely know that the quality of our time together dramatically improved because of what I was shifting toward and what I was focusing on when I was with her, and that made it more enjoyable for everybody. So I'm sure she at least benefited and felt that. I know it. Maybe even if she didn't articulate it in quite that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even for you to say, I liked when you said what you were focusing on, because again, it brings back to I was present with what was going on and how it was being done and why it was being done. And
Right.
I think so many times we show up, but we're not focused, when we're with others, and that makes such a huge difference. What type of advice would you have for anyone that has a family member that is diagnosed with dementia?
I would say be honest with yourself and do the hard/heart work up front. Don't run from it. Don't avoid it. Process through it, and it's going to suck, and that's okay. That's normal. But once you slog through that, I think that you will be much better equipped more quickly if you do it on the front end to maximize that situation and make it as good as it possibly can be. And so just to own your emotions, find trusted people, bring them into your world, and process through that stuff. And then just try to take it as it is. Try to be the most loving son or daughter or family member or whatever it may be that you possibly can be, because you love that parent so much. And so, like you said, what did you say? Safe,
happy, and pain-free. Yeah, I call it my memory chip. Is what I call it.
Yeah, but to try to do that as much as you can, I think is the most important thing. And and one more thing, and that it gets easier. It gets easier. The relation, it was difficult for me at first, but now over time, over the past couple of years, as I've been kind of like integrating these things in, it's different. The relationship is different. And you know what? Chances are it probably won't ever go back to what it was. But what we have now, though different, is good. And it's getting better all the time. And so there is hope. That's one thing that's important that I really want people to know and feel when faced with this.
Yeah, there's a lot of hope. Can you talk a little bit about your book, Jacob and the Cloak?
Absolutely. So, part of the things, lessons that I learned from these experiences that I'm talking, with your listeners about today, among other, amidst other things as well that have happened in my life, really led me to think long and hard about emotional health, right? What does it look like? Kind of like, what are the best practices for being a human being? What is the manual? And I started thinking about things like vulnerability, things like empathy, things that I wondered if you practice them, would they make you more loving, more kind? And so I began to do research over lots and lots of years, and I interviewed, students, and I interviewed friends of mine, and just talking about empathy and talking about vulnerability, and then I decided to, because I like to write, I like to learn, and I like to teach, right? And so, but sometimes you can get lost in your own kind of verbosity, when you're trying to write academically. It's just, it sounds pretty and eloquent, but, a lot falls through the cracks, So I thought, what is the simplest way for me to address this? And I thought, man, what about like a little children's fable? Like something that a kid could understand, but that would impact an adult, kind of like Giving Tree. Giving Tree is such an amazing book. Shel Silverstein, a kid could read it and get one good lesson out of it, but we read it and we're like, oh man, wow, And so I wrote this book, Jacob and the Cloak, with that in mind. And it's basically the story. It's not specifically focused on dementia, but it could be, because it's basically a metaphorical story about, a bear that has a bad thing happens. And in the book, it's just described as, a very big thing, like a big kind of hard thing happened. And then from that hard thing, this invisible cloak was dropped on him that he can see and feel, and that kind of disrupts his daily life. but no one else can. So they can see him tripping around, but they don't know why, because they don't see a cloak. And so, and basically the story is him trying to get help with the cloak. And so it's his journey toward vulnerability and fear and shame of, like, what will they think if they know? Will they, reject me? And so, from a metaphorical kind of imaginative perspective, and then it leads at the end, it finishes with kind of an offer of hope of what could be, as you move down this road. So, so that's kind of what the book is, and I'm planning on releasing it next summer, 2018. But I have a Kickstarter campaign that I will be launching soon, and I'd really encourage, if this is something that you are interested in or would be interested in learning more about, please go to, and I'm sure this information will be on the podcast and the info or whatever, on YouTube or however you do it. But it's jacobandthecloak.com. You can go there. There's an email list. Please sign up, and then you'll get updates and notifications on the book's development and when I'm going to be speaking and teaching, if I might be anywhere near you, on these kinds of things. But yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. And then you also have an art company, too.
That is correct.
Color Pop Tulsa. So if anyone, and I found that really interesting, too. You do some cool work. So that was very, very fun to see. And was there some drawings of the book there, too? Or was that was maybe on the other website, Jacob and the Cloak?
Yeah, there's a few drawings from the book on the landing page, the jacobandthecloak.com. There's not a lot, but if you go sign up for the email list, then I'll send you information on how to get on the Facebook page and stuff like that. And so there's more information there as well. So, but they're all on the landing page.
Okay. Well, great. Anything else that you'd like to share with our audience at all?
I would just say, this journey in dementia with my mom has been difficult, but it really has shaped me, and I believe it has shaped her as well. And and I just want to say to all you guys out there that are struggling with these same things, as I said before, it gets better. Don't give up, and there is something happening in your heart and in their heart, in the waiting and in the struggle. It's not like once you get it figured out or once something takes a turn for the better, then good stuff starts happening. No, stuff is happening all the time. So be encouraged that even when it feels like something isn't progressing, there is improvement happening. There is progression happening, even if it doesn't look like it's like a seed in the ground. You can't see it, but something's happening. Same thing. So, yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and I thought this was a very interesting conversation about empathy and vulnerability and acceptance and how you learn to walk the journey with your mom in a gracious way. So I think the more stories like that we can share with one another, the easier it makes for the next guy's journey, because there's always something we learn from everybody. If we have an open mind and an open heart that can improve our lives so that we can improve others. So again, thank you so much. If you want to again reach Scott Taylor, you can go to his website for the book, and that is Jacob and the Cloak, jacobandthecloak.com, or his art company, Color Pop Tulsa, colorpoptulsa.com.
And if they want to shoot me an email, I was going to say, if they want to shoot me an email, they can shoot me an email through the website as well, and I will get those emails if they want to contact me as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time today. Really appreciate it, Scott.
No, thank you so much for having me. I had a blast, and I look forward to staying connected and talking with you again at some point.
Sounds good. Love to hear when the book kicks out, so we can maybe do another show just specifically on that when you're through. Okay?
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Thank
okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Bye now. Before wrapping up, I just want to give you some highlights. I'll be putting out a new dementia chats here probably by the weekend that'll be really interesting. It's about how people with dementia should communicate with others, and there's some helpful tips for once you get diagnosed to make life a little bit easier. So much of what we talk about is the focus of care partners and how they should interact with us. And so I think it'll just be a little different perspective that'll be very interesting. Also wanted to give a shout out to the Memory Cafe directory. They're just doing a wonderful job at tracking all the memory cafes around the country, and they've put it in a very, very simple fashion to find. So just go to memorycafe.com. Also, I want to give a shout out to the Purple Table Reservations, who is starting a movement on training restaurants how to be dementia friendly. And Jennifer is just doing an absolutely fantastic job with that. You can just go ahead and Google them, and they will pop right up. I also want to give a shout out to the American Senior Magazine, which has a great magazine, wonderful articles, large print, and it's all about aging with purpose and really being proactive in terms of developing that stage of life. On our website, alzheimersspeaks.com, you can always download our helpful tips for communication as well. So please feel free to go ahead and do that, and we will talk to you all next week. Have a blessed holiday season, everyone. Talk soon. Bye now.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.